Chris, thank you for joining me today. Chris Zukowski of How to Market a Game, the man with the golden mic. And I'm very pleased to have you on the channel because your kind of special area is, that sounds wrong. Your sort of specialist area is something I get asked about a lot. People always kind of ask me about Steam pages, ask me about game marketing, what to do on socials, and I'm very much like, I don't know, I'm a game designer. Just try and make the game good, and then fingers crossed.
Yeah, let's talk about my special area. So I love talking about that stuff, the marketing side of things. But it kind of comes down to, it's funny you say that, because a lot of times in my marketing, people ask me, I'm like, I don't know, just make a good game. Yeah, that's half of it. Because I really think, and we'll get into it, but I really, the tweeting and those content creators that you always talk about, that's like 10% of what matters. You know, the biggest impact is the game, because you could follow everything that we know is best practice, but if the game's boring or the graphics aren't good, or is this kind of a not fun game, it doesn't matter. Like, you'll try all the things and they're gonna work. So I'm excited. Let's talk.
Yeah, let's do it. Because, you know, I've been doing this channel for a year now, so I've looked at lots of people's games as they've come through, like probably more than 100 now. And I'm not a marketing expert. I have done game marketing, but that was more in the, you know, mobile space where it's all user acquisition and people spending crazy amounts of money on just getting people to look at the game in the first place. So it's just completely different. But I think what tends to happen is people hear that word marketing, and because as consumers, the marketing we see is advertising, right? So most people, when they hear marketing, they think of advertising. And my understanding is it's a bit broader than that, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny whenever somebody's like, well, I don't fall for marketing. And then you hear them like defend Nintendo to the death. And then it's like, that's marketing. You just don't know it. Because marketing, a lot of people think marketing is like the sales pitch. Yeah. Like that kind of stuff. But marketing is the product, everything about it, the look and feel, the price of things, whether it's a premium product or a cheap, discount product. All that is marketing. Marketing is really literally bringing something to market. And so you have to factor in all the aspects of, what is your brand, what type of product you have, the genre that you're in, all that stuff is marketing, because you're bringing it to the market. It's just a thin sliver. It's the eggshell that is what do I tweet today? That is the thinnest eggshell of marketing. And so when people say like, I'm bad at marketing, it's really the whole product that you're not thinking of. And so marketing is really the feeling that you get, or the reason you identify with one product or the other. So if you've ever been like, yeah, Nintendo's the best or Sony's the best, that's marketing. You just fell for it. So, and it's not falling for it. It's just you're enjoying something, and it's okay to enjoy things, folks.
What do you think are the most common stumbling blocks that people have? Let's say that we've got a kind of imaginary game developer. They've got a game that they actually know is good, right? They know that the game is good. Maybe they've taken it to some conventions. They've given it to like dozens of people to play. The people are making happy noises about this game. They've got some evidence that this game is good and marketable. What do you think are the biggest stumbling blocks for people after that point usually?
I mean, it's just understanding the Steam platform, because I've like my special area, as we were talking about, my special place is Steam. I just talk about that. I just study that. I just decided I'm going to pick that. And for Steam, you have to understand it's a very hardcore audience. If you're coming from mobile, like you said, mobile is a very casual audience, so they don't invest in games. Like the people are like, whatever ad hits them today, they're going to try that and they're going to play it. And so that's why acquisition. Whereas Steam is a very hardcore market. They are super fans. They're hobbyists. They study every game and every company, and they know everything about them. They run boycotts, all that kind of stuff. So it's a very hardcore market. And so the way that market operates is a little different than other things. And so I think not understanding that market, which is why I talk about it, is the biggest mistake that a lot of people do. And one is just understanding, okay, I'm going to put it on. And Steam is not just like a repository for your file where there's a link that you can send people. I think people treat it like Dropbox, where it's like, okay, here's the link. Okay, buy it, go to this link. Whereas Steam, the reason you're paying 30% is there's a whole ecosystem and an algorithm that they are promoting the right type of games. And if you don't understand the algorithms and the certain benchmarks and the general rules, like I often consider it's almost like sports. Like if you're going to play football or soccer, American football or English, whatever, it doesn't matter. basketball. You got to understand the rules. They're like, I got a good game, but they don't understand the rules of that platform. What you got to do is have that Steam page up nice and early. You got to get that demo up nice and early. This is kind of newer. I'd say in the last 5 years or so. Get that demo up, and then you reach out to content creators, you enter into festivals, and you promote around a demo. And that demo, and through the natural course of that, is what promotes your game to get you in the right place in the algorithm. And then you release typically minimum 6 months of being up on the Steam, having a coming soon page, and gathering somewhere around 5,000 to 7,000 wish lists minimum. So that's just the general game plan, very high level rules of the game. And I just don't think first time devs internalize how important that is.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I've had this vibe a few times when I've looked at certain games. Sometimes you look at a game and you can think this isn't for Steam, but it might do well in this other place. You know, I've played games that have been sent to me before where they're kind of framing them as like an indie PC game, and it's like, this is a casual mobile game, or you know, this is a web portal game, which used to be a bigger deal with Newgrounds and stuff like that, but they're still around. There are still web portals where you can host your game and get paid for people seeing banner ads while they're on the site, right? And there are just certain types of games that are, as you say, not hardcore enough, not the sort of thing that someone would invest lots of kind of time of their own time and emotion into wanting to play, because it's just, you know, the heyday of web portals used to be like kids playing them at their breaks at school and like finding the most offensive game they could play on Newgrounds about, like, you know, putting a baby in a blender or something and like playing that for an hour. Yeah, like you say, people just see Steam as the games platform. I must do my thing for Steam, and there are certain things that just don't feel like Steam games. And it's interesting that you say about just getting on there as early as possible, because I've had people ask me about, you know, should I go to Steam or should I go to itch? And I've told them, I don't know. Chris says go on Steam as early as possible. But I think there is a slight difference in the audience there, where itch is predominantly made up of game dev hobbyists, because everyone's on there because of game jams and stuff like that. And that means that maybe, like, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks before you start on Steam, that's a good place to just test things with people, because you get a certain type of feedback that is less like angry consumer feedback and more like friendly fellow game developers trying to help each other out type feedback on itch. You know, if someone intended to eventually go to Steam, that's the only reason why I'll be encouraging them to go to itch as well, because it's a bit more like talking shop with other game developers there rather than gamers, if that makes sense.
I love itch, by the way. I think itch is a great place to start. And I've done a couple profiles of games that have started on itch. One was The Root Trees Are Dead, which is this narrative game. It's kind of like a narrative detective kind of puzzly game. And then another one is like Die in the Dungeon. And there's several games, or Peglin, or there's one called Dome Keeper, which used to be called Dome Romantic. I profile these all the time. And actually, itch is very similar to Steam. But the thing that, like you said, they're not angry pitchforks on Steam or on itch. Itch is very open to jank and weirdness and rougher graphics. I'm not saying bad graphics, just like not as polished as Steam. So my advice for game devs is, rather than committing to a game, like, take a game jam game, upload it to itch, and if you're getting traction, and I actually did some analysis, if you go to my blog and just search itch.io, I just surveyed a bunch of devs. If you see like a spike of like 5,000 views on your itch page, that's usually a sign. Like, it'll look like a spike, and the spike peaks at about 5,000. That's usually a sign that the audience is liking you and that streamers are sharing you. And I'm talking free. It's got to be free. And it's better if it's in browser, so that there's no barrier to entry. You just click it, you view it, and you go there. And that's a good corollary. I mean, you're not going to make money off of itch. That's the thing. But it tells you, if you're seeing positive traction at itch, that's a good sign. And then I would then convert and go deeper on Steam and say, hey, I think this is a game we can develop. So my advice, folks, is don't commit to an idea too fast. Upload it to itch, spend 1 to 2 months working on it, see if you get that interest. In my blog post, I give some ways that you can kind of juice the numbers, like get your game on itch to be seen a little bit further. And then if you get that pickup, that's actually a good sign. The market's saying, yes, go for it. And like I said, there's a good corollary to Steam. If you do well on itch, you're probably going to do well on Steam. Very similar audiences. It's just the temperament is a little bit more chill on itch. So
yeah, that makes sense. We had a game on recently called Underboard that was like an auto battler thing, and they'd gone through this process of they'd made an itch build, but it was basically, it wasn't a different game, but it was branded as like a prequel to the main game, if that makes sense. So they'd had that up for a while, tested the core loop, and then the game that you download from Steam, it doesn't just look like a kind of follow-on from it. It looks like a almost separate thing. And then that kind of probably avoids any situation where people try and go to download that and get the old version off itch and then are disappointed because it's a bit janky and everything. But yeah, I think people get this thing in their head that they think if they let people play something early for free, then they're never going to make any money off of it. And like some of the most successful indie games in the world have been played by like thousands of people for free before they become a commercial product, you know?
Oh yeah. And this is the thing you devs need to learn. Devs way underestimate how big the gaming public is. Like if you just turn on Steam, there are 11 million people playing at its peak. Every day, 11 million people are like in a game. Okay. And that's like huge. And you cannot, I know it's like, oh, 11 million here, 11 million there. No, that is huge. You cannot overexpose your game. That is not the problem. The limiting factor is that your game is not fun enough. It is not, oh, I've overexposed my game. I've overexposed it. You can never, ever overexpose your game. And that's a thing you just need to pull out of your brain and throw it down. Like, I've shown too much. I gave it away for free. Like, you literally cannot do it. Like, I was at GDC, I was at a bar with a dev. I'm not going to say who it was, but this guy made $1 million super popular, then made a sequel that was just as popular, like mega seller. This guy's a millionaire multi times over. And he's like, we have sold to 1% of Steam. And this guy is like rich beyond dreams and has sold his game so well, and it's 1%. And I bet if you just randomly grabbed a person off the street and you're just like, hey, have you played this game? And they're like, what game? You are underestimating how big Steam is. And so you cannot overexpose your game. Then why don't all games so well? It's because Steam sees if there's interest in a small sample size. And if they see that interest, then they expand you to everyone. And that is why some games just don't take off, is the algorithms and all that kind of stuff are like, in our sample size, it's not looking good. And then so they're like, there's that opportunity cost. If we promote your game that converts at this lower level, we are sapping an audience that we could show to this game that converts at a much higher level. And that's why some games succeed and some games don't. They're just not just enough of an interest for people to throw down their money. So that's the limiting factor. Your game's just not fun enough.
I mean, there are different angles to that of like what makes something appealing over something else, right? And I think when you think of that 1% number that you just mentioned, one of the things I think people don't understand about marketing or promotion is that you're not trying to get everyone to like your thing. You're trying to find the exact right people for your thing, right? So, you know, there are approaches to this YouTube channel that I do that are not what other YouTubers do. And that's because I don't want everyone to be my audience. I want the right people that I want to speak to be my audience. And it's the same with a game. If you're kind of the appeal you're trying to make with your game is really, really broad, then it probably isn't going to appeal to anyone in a really focused way, right? So I see a lot of games that have art direction that's just really generic, and sometimes that's like an asset flip thing where they've just got like a generic fantasy mobile game bundle and it just looks like any other game. But so, sometimes like this is what people come to indie games for. It's why something like Balatro does well, because it's got this really weird creative direction with everything's a bit dark and twisted and janky. Yeah, I don't know. I think one of the best things that game developers can do in terms of learning creative direction is picking things from outside of games to base their game on, in terms of like art style and stuff, and go, it's going to be this popular thing, but we're going to take this game show and this music video or whatever, because that whole thing of like appealing very strongly to a small niche makes total sense to me. But I see so many people where they're kind of trend chasing or trying to make something that appeals to everyone at once, and it always kind of falls a bit flat as far as I can tell.
I'm okay with trend chasing. I'll tell you, like, the kind of concern I have about that statement is it's like, go crazy. I'm a genre. I believe in genre. I really do. I think a game has to be 30% new. Okay. And so my concern is people would interpret that language as, just go crazy. And I am, Maya build, where it's like most acceptable yet advanced type of thing, where it's like, it's just a little bit more. And so I think it's stronger when a dev approach is like, here's the genre. I know the genre inside and out. and this is what I'm going to bring to it. And I don't consider it trend chasing, because here's the thing, folks. Trends don't change that much. Everybody thinks trends change that much. I say the trends are staying there. You're not chasing anything. They're just like right there. There's no chasing. And so what I tell people is like, play all the genres. And I talked to a lot of successful devs. Like for my course, I brought people who made successful demos, because that's not my special area. My special area is not the actual crafting of the demo and the game design aspect. So I brought on in my course game designers to play through the game. Here's the thing: if I could sum up the most successful game designers and why are they successful? They play so many games. Like it is shocking. Like I was talking to one who made a demo, and I was like, where'd you come up with this or that? And they're like, oh, every Next Fest we play 50 demos and we just rocket through them. And I was like, really? Like, I study Steam. I don't even play 50 demos each Next Fest. And what I find is the successful game devs they play so much and they just pull it all in. And Derek Yu, I don't know if you read his book, and the best analogy he had for being creative is it's like a puzzle box, open up a jigsaw puzzle, and every game you play is like adding a piece to this puzzle box, and then it's you as a designer to reassemble these in a new way, all these little pieces that have existed already. And so he's not like, oh, I'm going to bring something new. It's like, okay, here's all the things, and I'm going to reassemble these things that everybody's kind of familiar with, but I'm going to do it in a new way. And I just find that the difference between a novice game designer or a new game designer and these experts is just the level of games they've played. They've played so many. And like, the red flag I have is when a dev comes to me and I'm like, oh, okay, what was your inspiration? They're like, Hades. And I'm like, okay, and they're like, Hades. And I'm like, that's a very rich genre. You haven't played, have you tried, I don't know, the original Risk of Rain? It's kind of similar. It's a roguelike. And they're like, no, I played the second one. No, Risk of Rain one. And they don't have that depth. I've even talked to horror people who are making like horror games that weren't so successful. And I was like, yeah, it's kind of like, like just like in Jaws, you don't show the monster right away and you build it. And they're like, what's Jaws? And I was like, you're making a horror game and you've never watched Jaws? How about the second one, the third? And they're just this lack of curiosity. And I find the game designers that are most active and are really good, they're almost historians, and they will tell you genres that influence this genre and this genre. And it's really more of what they're creating is a blend of these inspirations that you didn't know about. You're like, oh, what? This comes from this weird genre that was in this one region of Japan in the 80s, and you're bringing that to it. And so I think that mentality is more like to have that historian's mind, if I could say.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it. And I totally think you can work in such a way where you go, oh, these are popular now, I'm going to make one of those. But then you have to do your due diligence and you have to like go deep on that genre, right? And the amount of Bullet Heaven Survivors likes I've played where it feels like the person playing it has like played 30 minutes of Vampire Survivors and gone, oh yeah, this is easy. Look. They look at the set of features that you can immediately see in the game and go, this is easy. And then they don't really understand what the longer term appeal of that game is in terms of how you unlock things and all the secrets in it and, how it feels different to play with different sets of the toys and stuff like that. The Derek Yu book's a really good example as well of, he talks in that about like trying to fix problems with genres. So he's like, I like roguelikes, but I don't like these things about them. And I like platformers, but I don't like these things about them. So he's not just mushing together two things he likes, which is a classic mistake a lot of us make as well, is we just put together stuff that we like and we think it's going to be good because occasionally someone lucks out with like peanut butter and jelly when they do that, right? And it just turns out good. But it from his perspective, it was like, I'm going to try and fix these two problems I see with these genres by putting them together. It requires that kind of thing that you're talking about, of that kind of historical, being a student of games and taking on board how they do things differently and how you can take this from this game and this from this game rather than just sticking stuff together because you like it and hoping for the best,
Yeah, I think one of the best things, and this is kind of on the promotion side and the positioning of a game, was, the name escapes me, but it was like Don't Starve, where you have to go out into the danger area, pull in resources, build up your base, build up resources. And the copy on the Steam page was, you will never starve. Because what this developer, and this game did well, it's in the genre of like Don't Starve that kind of invented that genre. But you could tell that they had been studying all these top-down survivor likes And they're like, you know what? I think people are sick of the hunger mechanic. It's a drag, and nobody likes it. And so their pitch that did very well was, we've gotten rid of this mechanic that everybody's kind of sick of. And so it's very firm. Like in the genre, it was like 90% the same as Don't Starve. It was just like that one thing. They were like, and that's their thing. This is actually called the law of the opposites in marketing, where you go to your competition, you find one little weak spot in their armor, and your marketing says, I am not that thing. That thing sucks. And we are not that. And so what they were saying was, you know how Don't Starve, don't you hate the hunger mechanic? We are not. We are explicitly saying we do not starve. And so, yeah, you're not really changing that much. You're like just tweaking this one gameplay mechanic, the starvation mechanic, but it made it so, I was like, thank God we're so tired of that. And so that's what I say is having that historian mindset, and you're looking at where the trend, that you're chasing the trend, but actually you're leading the trend, because you can see like, hey, I can see everybody's getting sick of the hunger and starving mechanics. Let's advance the way the direction the genre is going by tweaking this one thing, and then we'll be there before we get there. That's kind of my perspective on how genre comes into it.
I feel like the way genres work in video games is just the worst, because we just call things the weirdest names. It's almost like we don't want people who are not into games to understand what we're talking about. So we just make it as confusing as possible. But a lot of the time, there's some fundamental thing that is just like very similar to some playground game, you know, like MOBAs are tugs of war, and there are push your luck mechanics that you get from blackjack that are in a million different games and stuff. So like I had someone ask me the other day about if there is some sort of like universal theory you can apply to game design, and I was like, nope. The only stuff that's universal really is like human psychology stuff to do with generally what we find fun. And then you look at other games and see, okay, how have other games done risk and reward, and how do they make that feel fun versus what are some situations where it doesn't feel so fun and stuff like that. But yeah, people really want there to be an easy framework that they can apply, and the problem is that games and playing are such a broad thing. Like, again, coming back to that 1%, you can make $1 million, millions of dollars by selling a game to 1% of the people on Steam. That's not because the other 99% of people on Steam hadn't heard about it. It's because they weren't the audience for it, and that audience was tiny and massive at the same time.
Okay, so indies can compete on the AAA level against AAA, but we have to play a totally different game. So AAA have the budget to just carpet bomb media. Like, it's on TV, it's at football games, it's everywhere. And so their strategy is we'll just mass appeal and we'll just hit everybody. But their quality is so high. And the strategy, and again, another red flag is when indies try and borrow strategies from AAA. And I'm like, they are playing a totally different game. They're playing Newtonian, Einsteinian physics. We're playing alternate reality, subatomic particle physics. We are until we find a unified theory of everything, we cannot play the same game they are. And so what we rely on is maximizing the Steam algorithms, and we make a lot out of a little, and a lot of that is just word of mouth, using the Steam algorithm, using these influencers for free. And this is kind of to your point of like the 1% audience. See, the mainstream that'll buy AAA games, they need super quality. They need pristine, ultimate quality. And this is why if you try and inspired by a AAA game too much, you can't compete. Like, they're very linear narrative games, but they're very long. They're like 40-hour long adventures, like Dark Souls. Anytime somebody's like, oh, I'm going to make a Dark Souls game, it's like, yikes, red flag. Because Dark Souls has so much content, and it is the combat is perfect. Like, they have spent decades, that company has spent decades performing, perfecting how combat works. Whereas indies, we're not polished. So a lot of the games that you see come out of indies are just highly replayable, really fun, and they're not really as much focused on beautiful, perfect graphics and perfect controls. They have to pick genres and type of things that can work to their strengths. And so I think that's a mindset that indies have to have, is like, don't copy the big guys.
Maybe this is just me being a hipster, but I think we've got a lot of devs that, it's not just that they're inspired by AAA and they want to make something of that quality. It's that they don't have indie reference points because they haven't played enough indie games, right? They buy their 3 or 4 AAA games a year. They just play that, and then they sit down at Unreal or whatever, and they're like, I'll make that. And a lot of people just need to kind of improve their diet of indie games, and even if you initially think, oh, this doesn't look very good, like, there's not enough polys on that tree or whatever.
Yeah, this is a symptom I see all the time. And here's the hard thing with games is like, and I've thought about this. I was going to write a blog post about it. Like, if you look at a Hollywood movie, nobody thinks I'm going to make a Hollywood movie, because you would literally need like Tom Cruise, and you would need the streets of Paris, and you would need him like to do a stunt on a motorcycle. And I think people watch that and they're like, that's an incredible spectacle. There's no way. But on game design, game dev side, if you're a decent programmer and you get Unreal or Unity, you can pick any slice. Like in a couple of days, you could have the Link character running around a grassy field, and it looks like Breath of the Wild. And you're like, damn, I got this. And then you think you can make all of Breath of the Wild, but you don't really. Like, you could pick any sliver out of a AAA game, and a decent enough programmer could make it, And then you think, oh, I could just do this. But you can't, because there's so much content. It has to line up, and it has to be balanced, and there's bugs and edge cases. And so people just assume, oh yeah, let's make a AAA game. In a weekend, I made like 1% of it, just 100 more days, and I can make 100% of it. So I got this. But you just can't. And so I agree with you with the diet. You have to play games made by small teams, and these games don't rise very high because they've just targeted their audience, and they've found it, and they've made it. So I do have a blog post. I call them crafty, buildy games, and you got to play them so you kind of understand the vibe of what are the games selling on Steam, and they're very different than AAA games. They just feel different, and this is not a hipster way of saying. It's just their game loops are a lot more loopy. They're a lot. You play the same thing over and over again, but the difference is in the metadata. It's not as much narrative. The narrative has turned down from most of these games. It's mostly about, this is why roguelikes are doing so well, is because like you can play the same content over and over again. And by playing that same content in a fun way, not a grindy way, a small team can make enough content, and it's polished enough to satisfy people. And that's what the secret is. Like, you gotta play those smaller dev games. Yeah. So just play games.
I think another way of looking at it is like a AAA game has all of these things in it, and indie games tend to just be one of those things, right? And I think I've seen you give this advice before. If you want to make a game that tells a story, just do that. You just make a visual novel, make a game that's entirely based on narrative. And it doesn't have to be a visual novel, doesn't have to be a dialogue-driven game. Like Florence was an example of a game that came out a couple of years ago that was a narrative game that had no dialogue in it. And Unpacking is another example of that, of a game that tells a story where you just move items around and all of that kind of stuff. But then, like you have a AAA game, and it's got fighting, it's got dialogue, it's got puzzles, it's got a fishing mini game. And building an indie game is like, you can make any one of those things to the level of quality of the big game, but you just can't do them all at the same time. The other thing I was thinking about a moment ago when you were talking about people kind of trying to base their product or base their marketing strategy on AAA is that we had a game on the stream last week, I think it was, where I looked at their Kickstarter. I did a big breakdown of like their Kickstarter, their Steam page and everything like that. And all the way through, they'd sort of bolded the name of the studio, bolded the name of the game, put trademark all over everything, and it was this thing. It just kind of, it comes across as a bit cringe, because it's like you're trying to present yourself as a corporation, and actually what the audience for indie games wants isn't that. It's like the same thing as presenting yourself as McDonald's versus presenting yourself as a local bakery. And the whole point of going into a local bakery is it's like they know their customers' names, and they're not in a uniform and all of that kind of stuff. And the whole thing about like doing this kind of organic marketing, being on social media, talking to people, is that you're not presenting yourself as a company. You're presenting yourself as just like a person who had a hand in this project,
Yeah, I know. I agree with that 100%. And here's one other thing that I see a lot that I don't think people talk enough about it, but I think it's like when indies target casual, I think that's a big mistake. That's a big red flag, casual games. And I think part of it is a defense mechanism, because you say like, hey, I'm making this game, and you super critic, coming in like, hey, your jump's a little janky. This is not good. This is not deep enough. Because Steam players want depth. They want super deep games. And you're like, hey, this is like not there. And then people are like, well, it's for casuals. No, it's for casuals. It's not for you're approaching this from a hardcore point of view. No, this is for casuals. And it's like, no, the casuals are not there for your game. They will not find it. And I liken it to alcohol. I don't know if you drink alcohol, but it's like, we may craft artisanal stuff, and the casuals drink Budweiser and stuff like that, and their palate. Like when I first started drinking alcohol, I drank this stuff called Mike's Hard Lemonade, and it tasted like lemonade, and it was like baby's first alcohol or something. And so it is not a refined palate, and it takes you years of slowly developing your palate before you are able to understand like a Burgundy or something like that. And the people who make Mike's Hard Lemonade is like a German conglomerate that has global sales and global approach. And all I can do is go into a grocery store and just pull this thing off the thing. I don't have to go find it. And so when you try to approach casuals, you are playing in the big space because AAA games are appealing to casuals. Like when Nintendo sounds so cute, they are a 1 to 200 year old company who have been in this since the 80s in video games, even longer. And they have a global brand and they can do all this global stuff. And that's how they can approach the casuals. That's how much infrastructure you have to build in order to get to a casual person because they don't care. They're like, whatever's on the top shelf, I'm just going to pull it down. Tastes like lemonade. I'm going to drink it. You cannot do that at your scale. You have to appeal to the people who are like, I will study every single roguelike that is released. Those are your audience. And so when you say, I'm making a casual game for casuals, that person who studies every single roguelike, who's the person who's going to find your game, is going to be like, this is for casuals. Out of here. You going easy and saying, I'm going for casuals, you are now competing against Nintendo, and you will not win that battle because you can't reach the casuals. They don't care about you. They're not on Twitter. They're not on anything. They're just like, they don't listen to podcasts or YouTube channels directed by, professors of game design. They don't care. They just don't care. So you cannot reach those people. So you really have to understand who you are making, and you can't go casual. So devs, you're not going to be casual. I'm sorry.
It's a definitional thing, isn't it? I think over the years, we sort of treated it as like a jokey insult to call someone casual, but it is a lack of investment. It is someone who plays whatever's advertised to them, someone who plays whatever is free, happy to sit through a few ads if they don't have to pay for anything. Like in the mobile space, the conversion rate on in-app purchases is 1% of players. So those big Candy Crush games and stuff like that, 99% of the millions of people that play them have never given the developer any money apart from watching ads. I think if you are serious about that route and genuinely serious about it, rather than it being a cop-out, like you said, like you've tried to make a game, you've made a simpler version of the game, and then you go, oh well, it's just casual. I think there is a possible route, but it's things like Wordle. It's like making some weird breakthrough web browser game or something that anyone can jump on quickly. But then there's the question of how do you monetize that,
And the way you monetize it is you sell it to the New York Times. Like the guy didn't make any money really off Wordle. He made money because he sold it to the New York Times, and their business model is we just need to get people on the page and then we make money off of subscriptions. And so it's like he had to sell it to somebody else to make money off of it. And so this is another thing folks do is they're like, oh, this is a successful game. We're all talking about it. But you didn't dig down deep enough about what is actually the reason it sold or why is it successful. And it's a couple leaps before you actually realize why it's successful. And that's what I try and do on my course and my blog is really dive deep into actual behind the scenes mechanisms that I don't think enough devs who are glossy eyed and bushy tailed are thinking about, this kind of crass stuff. My special area is crassness.
Yeah, I can remember there being like years and years ago, big fuss about, oh, this dev is friends with this. I won't go into like specifics, but this dev is friends with this journalist at Rock Paper Shotgun, and that's the only reason why blah blah blah. And it's like that is just how scenes happen. That's how music scenes always happen. That's how indie films get made. It's just like there was some point where we decided that games journalist meant like an investigative journalist who's supposed to find the truth about, rather than just like a fan who's here to tell you about games, which is what it really is supposed to be. And people, really kind of underestimate the importance of that side of networking and just like being a human, making connections, not with a business card, but like actually hanging out with people and stuff like that was why it's so important to go to events when you get a chance to. And I, whenever I say stuff like that on the channel, someone pops up and goes, I am the only game developer in my country. And it's usually an exaggeration, and then I tend to think, well, maybe you can make other game developers in your country. Maybe you can be the first person that founds like your local GDC or something like that. But I think the social part of trying to make a creative business work, people fall down at it, and it's sort of linked to why people say they're not good at marketing. It's the bit that people are happy to say that they're bad at, but people are quite happy to say, I'm not good at this outgoing sociable stuff, because they think it makes them seem like some sort of like genius recluse coder person who just can't do people things, Is that something you've come across a lot in your work?
Oh, absolutely. I wrote a blog post about this. People think marketing is like social butterfly, like, I'm life of the party. Yeah. And I think social media gets linked erroneously to marketing. Well, let me tell you, folks, people could market things before social media existed. Social media is really only like 20 years old. People managed to market products before the year 2007. Okay, folks, 2007 did not invent marketing. So a lot of people see social media, people who are very funny, they're like, yeah, and they're like dunking on people, and they think, oh, I'm not that, so that's social, that is marketing, and I am not that. Marketing is actually very strategic and calculating. I think the reason people say I'm bad at marketing is they just don't know. I didn't get into this to blog just because I wanted to. Like, I just get mad when stuff isn't documented. I used to be a technical writer and stuff like that. And I learned what marketing actually was. And it was like, nobody is describing what it actually is. And so I just started doing that as my blog. That's how I got into this business. And I find that most people who say they're bad at marketing just don't even know what it is. Like, what do you do? And once I explain it to people, you see the lights come on and they're like, oh, okay. And then they turn out they're really good at it. And the reason is marketing is strategic, and then it's like, okay, our product is this, and there's a gap in the market, and this person is in charge of this gap. I don't want to get too wishy-washy. I like to do examples. Okay, like David Whaley, who did The First Tree, and he did his game that he's working on right now is called We Harvest Shadows. Yeah. And what happened was he tracked down Jeff Keighley, and he said, my game is going to be perfect for your show. And he just tracked the guy's email address down and was like, and it was just an email. All he did was one email, and he was like, I think you're going to like my trailer. Here it is. And he made a trailer, and he showed it to him, and he was like, that is cool. And that was it. That was like the most impactful marketing, was one email, and that's all it was. It wasn't social media, wasn't the thing. He just went out to them. And then the genius thing, where it's like, this is the strategic part, is he knew, okay, Jeff Keighley is like an industry legend. Everybody loves that guy. So he went to IGN and he knocked on the door of IGN. He was like, Jeff Keighley just approved this trailer, but he only wants 30 seconds. Strategically, he made a minute and a half. So he went to IGN and was like, y'all want the uncut version? And IGN's like, and they got in it. That is marketing. See, he strategically played them off of each other like a Machiavellian. And he turned something that he had, which was a minute and a half trailer. And Jeff Keighley was like, that's too long. I only want 30 seconds. And he was like, oh, no, I can still make stuff out of this. And they turned around and went to IGN. That's what I mean by it's not being social and funny and like life of the party. This is like 2 emails he sent. One to Jeff Keighley, one to IGN. And that got him like 100,000. I think he got 200,000 wish lists in about 2 months, And so that is marketing. That is what it is. And so once people understand these rules, like you got to reach out to the big guys, you got to have something that's proven to be interesting. You, strategic programmer thinker, are going to be awesome at this stuff. And so that's what I try and teach in my course. That's what I try and teach on my blog, is like, these are the things that work. The marketing geniuses are the ones that are like, okay, I'll use this, and I'll play it off to each other, and that's what's going to get it.
Yeah.
It's not social. It's strategic.
I can see other applications for that as well, because I think one of the things that people struggle with when they're like a hobbyist and they're trying to go full-time indie or something like that is that they still have an employee mindset. They're thinking like, Steam is my boss, Gabe is my boss, the players are my boss, I'm just gonna, what do you want from me, kind of thing. And part of becoming your own boss is you have to be a bit of an opportunist, but you also have to spot opportunities and make opportunities, which is exactly what you're talking about with the We Harvest Shadows like demo video thing as well. I see people approach this in a totally scattergun way, where I receive emails from from devs trying to send out games, and they've clearly sent it to 30 people, and it's not a customized email or anything like that. There's nothing that sort of makes me feel like special that someone has picked me to play this game or anything like that. As I used to see it with job applications as well. I used to be a hiring manager at a studio, and you'd get these job applications that are just like, you can almost hear it, you know, like, I am writing to apply for that role at your company, and they've like, and it's clear, it's like they've applied for like programmer roles, designer roles, production roles with the same CV, and it's just so generic because they've tried to like take loads of little shots at loads of different opportunities rather than picking 5 things they really want and like working out, right, how am I going to approach this, which is exactly what you're talking about here, of like being strategic, and that applies to getting your game in front of people. It applies to lots of other things in life, and I think that is a thing people really struggle with when they make this jump, is starting to realize that they're the boss, and it's not just like it's not a day job where you're working for someone else. You're not working for Gabe, you're not working for Steam, you're not like desperately trying to appease 100% of the people on Steam. You're the boss of what you're doing, and that kind of thing that you just described is boss behavior.
Yeah, and the other thing is like, that's not public, like, and that's what I dedicate this blog to, is like uncovering that stuff, because you didn't see David email Jeff Keighley and then email IGN. Like, there's no way you would see that, but you can go on social media, and this is why, back to your point about the AAA trailer syndrome, it's almost like cargo cult mentality of like, oh, you put a trademark and you put your logo up front, and then you're $1 million seller. And it's like, no, that's just the outer shell that you can see. The stuff that actually works is the behind the scenes stuff. And so that's what I've dedicated my whole career to in this games marketing stuff, is just exposing, like, this is the stuff that actually works. And I see a lot of devs see like Reddit threads and stuff. They're like, I tweet and I post 100 Reddit threads and I get nowhere. And it's like, that is the outer shell stuff that I'm talking about, that looks, you can see that it's an available thing to you, availability bias, where you're like, oh, I can see that you tweet, and then this game's successful because they have a lot of tweets. And so they're like, oh, I must tweet. But that's not it. You've got to learn the behind the scenes stuff that actually matters. And most of the time, it's just sending an email to the right person with a pitch that is appealing to what they need. Because Jeff Keighley needs cool trailers for his show. Otherwise, he looks dumb. And so when you come with an awesome, cool looking trailer, he's like, I need that. And then he lets you in. So it's strategic, kids. It's strategic. You're going to love it. Once you understand it, you're going to love it. Marketing, by the way. That's what I'm talking about. You're going to love my special area, which is marketing.
It's not about the tweets. The tweets are what the successful people do when they're procrastinating. They're not the reason for the success. We've gone through so much. I really appreciate this. I'm going to have a lot of fun editing it down somehow, because we've covered so much in this time. You have an offer coming up on, is it one of your courses?
Okay, so every year I put my course on sale 2 times a year. One is in the summertime, and then one time, just before the end of the year, Black Friday. So it's summer. So I'm putting it on for summer. So I put everything on sale. The cheapest is going to be all year. And so I'm teaming up with the professor here. The professor. So if you buy the course using his link down below, he gets some of this. So we're sharing anything that he brings in. So support the channel, the clinic, and then you learn about marketing. You're going to learn how to love it. You're going to learn about my special area all the time. So what it is, basically, it's a course. The flagship course is called Wishlist and Visibility Masterclass. And this has been used by, like, I know courses, oh no, it's so scammy. This is like the best course in the industry. Like, I've been used by Tiny Glade. You all know Tiny Glade. I'm in the credits because of this course. The artist who did Celeste, he's making his game and he used my course, and it's like it's known in the industry. This is one's fly-by-night course, and I've updated to what we call 3.0. I update it all the time for the Steam algorithm, because the algorithm will change. So the biggest change that I'm updating this course for is all the demo stuff, because Valve basically realized, oh, demos actually work, so let's add some tools into the Steam system to promote demos. And so you have to time your demo right. And so I just rewrote the course to support this new strategy that Valve has implemented, I got developers who have made really successful demos because I'm a filthy marketer. I don't know game design. And so I brought, this is another new thing for this course. I brought 3 designers who have made amazing demos that have done super well. One of them's Tiny Glade. The other guy is the Bulwark guy. You know, he does Bulwark, the Chronicles. It's called Bulwark, the Falconeer Chronicles. Sala is his name, Thomas Sala. Really funny guy. I brought them on and we just played the demo together. I played the demo and I was like, why did you do this in the demo? And he's like, oh, here's why. So fans of game design are going to love that part because I'm a filthy game marketer. I don't know design. I brought real designers in and we walked through things like that. So it's like director's commentary of a demo. So if you're wanting to know how to do it, that's what it is. Oh, and the third one I brought in was I'm friends with the folks at Black Tabby Games who made Slay the Princess. And so we walked through because a lot of people are like, how can you make a narrative demo? And once you play it. So I brought them on. I was like, how do I do a narrative demo? We played through the narrative demo. I actually played through it twice because they changed it through there. And I was like, why'd you make this change and that change? So I think if you like listening to the Indie Game Clinic, you're going to love this new feature that I added, which is basically director's commentary behind a demo and the design choices behind a demo and how you make it appealing without giving away the game so that people will go on and buy it. Because it's strategic, it's not social. So I hope you enjoyed the links down below, but use that link so that the doctor can, pay for the clinic.
Thank you, Chris. If you've been watching the channel for a while and been thinking, oh, I wish there was a way I could support this, now you can do it in a way that gets you something additional and gets you access to Chris's course. And I think something that you said there that really resonated with me is kind of learning to love doing it. If you can deliver on that, then some people are going to be very happy because it's not horrible work once you're doing it, like marketing a thing that you made and you love. It's just getting over that initial hump of thinking that it's an activity you don't like doing. And yeah,
I find that the reason people don't like doing it is they just don't know what it is. That's the main thing. It's like programming. Like I remember I hated programming before I read this book and it was terrible. And I was like, I hate programming. And then I had a really good teacher who taught me how to program. And I was like, oh, this is actually okay. I still don't love programming, but I think half the battle is just not knowing what it is. Like, what is marketing? What are the things that actually work? And that's what my course is. I literally document every single way I know to get a wish list. Every single way. And I show case studies of like, this game used this strategy, this game used this strategy. And then you can do the thing. That's the other thing that's new to this course is I did a roadmap where there's like several different strategies depending on the type of game. Like if you're making a wholesome game, I line out exactly how you market a wholesome game step by step. And then I give you the couple decision tree choices where it's like, if your strategy is kind of going this way, I would lean on this. Or if your strategy is kind of going this way, I go like that. And that allows you to kind of see what works. And then it turns into that strategic thing where it's like, I know all the elements that I have to do. It's just which one do I pull into the strategy? That's what I'm trying to do, is just get people to understand how it works, because I know you're all smart enough to do it. You just need to know what are the possibilities and what works.
Yeah, and anything strategic like that, often when people are unsure of themselves, they flit around between things and they don't stick to a strategy for long enough, right? So by giving people those resources, by giving them things like those flowcharts and stuff, they can go, okay, I'm going to stick with this because this is what worked for that, and this is similar in those ways. So yeah, that sounds really, really helpful. So thank you for bringing me in on that, and I hope lots of people watching this video click that link and make good use of that course. And good luck to everyone out there with your games, making them, marketing them, whichever stage you're at, maybe doing both at the same time if you're devlogging and stuff like that. Thank you, Chris, and best of luck with the sound.
I love watching the clinic. You're great. I like the outdoor series that you did when you were outside in the English countryside. Is beautiful out there. Those are my favorite. I thought you were going to do a travel show. I was like, what is this travel? Oh, it's the Indie Game Clinic. I really I'd appreciate it. You should also do travel blogs. So